What's next for the Xenoblade franchise? Long video, so grab something to eat or watch in multiple sits. Basically, on top of the fandom's current division and debate about the future, Xenosaga or Xenoblade Cross, I want, instead, to see these other ideas being discussed. Both gameplay and lore ideas that I'm bringing to the table today. A grand total of 18 theories, considering elements and mysteries presented in the trilogy, interviews, external influences, as well as the latest Ionios Moments statements. Here you have the topics I will cover so you know it's worth it and which parts interest you the most in advance. This is one of my longest and most schizo videos yet. Please do stick till the end and let me know what you think of it. Aiming to reach 1K subscribers, so subscribing and sharing is appreciated. Alright, before going heavy into the lore, our first point. Playable flashbacks or points of view. Let's begin with a little bit of gameplay plus Takahashi's statements. He said that many questions regarding Origin and Logos will be answered in the future. Just be patient. So, Origin and Logos will be featured in the future. Now, the question is, will it be in the next game, which is what I think so, or is he hinting at more prequel content or Wave 5? It could be weird having Ionios flashbacks in the next game to explain Logos, but not impossible. Future Redeem brought to us an important gameplay mechanic that no other Xenoblade game has had. Playable flashbacks. Every Xenoblade has been linear when it comes to the party. There weren't many major group split-ups. They stated in a Xenoblade 1 interview that he wanted to avoid losing party members for too long, like a certain character in Xenogears that becomes unplayable until the end, as the player gets attached to them, but also all the time investment in accessories and builds they so hardly work for. That's why Ryan's betrayal was discarded, for example. In Future Redeem, we got segments where players use other characters in isolation, or normally non-playable heroes, like Nile, with independent stats that differ from your main party configuration, like their level as they are in the past, and in completely different maps, as Future Redeem occurs in Sept Omnia, but flashbacks utilize the Cadencia map. With this, what we could get in the future is different points of view of the same events or time periods, different campaigns from different sides of the world or something. The closest thing we got was in Xenoblade 1, when we used Melia to walk or venture into the High Entia Tomb, later regaining the full control of the party and their point of view of the events, or the beginning of Xenosaga 2. With this in mind, we could have playable flashbacks as N prior to becoming Mobius, when he found Logos, and finally learn what machinations united those two. Or playable flashbacks of Bionis and Ulrest during the creation of Origin. That is, if we only get those answers in the next game. We could have to wait for a Xenoblade 3 Definitive Edition or the case of a Wave 5.
Thank you for watching.
Anyways, we'll still get flashbacks and different points of view regardless. Now, let's go to some lore before touching the gameplay again. First, what you all came for, Malos. We have 3 things to talk about. First, how Logos came back is a mystery. The first signs of this was in Xenoblade 2 ending, where it spoke to Numa after death, while inside of Ion. Ion recognized 2 cores inside it, even though neither Numa nor Logos cores were actively there. Numa said something to him, but we still don't know. Numa came back as Pyra and Mithra, but how they came back might be a clue. We had 2 options, with some branches. They had a backup in their cores, or Ion assimilated their souls, or light. First, if they had a backup in their cores, Rex had the core in his hand. It was off, until some particles from the shooting stars from the beanstalk, where Numa and Ion were last seen, fell into it, reactivating and materializing them as two persons, due to a distinct psyche. Branching from this first option, either the Numa core had a backup of Logos, as the Master Blades were tasked with receiving and managing all information from Blades. Malos turned into light modes just like the other Blades when they died. Malos needed Pyra's data to restore himself in the first place. The other branching theory is that, just like Pyra and Mithra came back due to a backup in their core, Malos did too. How? Well, when he recovered from his apparent death in Torna, he rematerialized himself partially from particles, and then just needed some Pyra data to fully reconstruct himself. He only had a fraction of his core, the big shard of it. Makes sense that you will regenerate from your bigger piece. Where is the small shard that is missing though? That could be the key. A smaller shard that he did not have and did not regenerate. Where could it be? Logically, it must have fallen with the other half of Torna, the right half. More of that on the furnace analysis, but basically, in Moritha there's only the left half of Torna, thanks to Spark Opus for the footage. While in Xenoblade 3, we explored Danak and Lazaria, which were in the right half. If this was the case, when Origin recorded and reconstructed the world, the right debris from Torna, along with Malos' small shard, were brought to life, Malos becoming a sword. That is option 1. The other option, which could either support or contradict the previous one about Numa having Malos backup, is Ion. Ion recognized two cores, even none were inside. Numa entered it, but without her core active, and previously Malos was inside, and after death he spoke to Numa from inside the machine, asking how was it being alive, as if he didn't remember. So, some data was clearly lost. Pyra said Ion was their whole being. Ion was the coalition government's last resort, a special powerful artifice made to hold or maybe transfer the entire Trinity processor as one. They may be machines, but all of us who play Xenoblade 2 know Pyra, Mithra, Logos, and any blade really had a soul. So, Ion recognized the two of them even though their cores were not there. Means their souls, light waves or data was partially transferred to Ion, identifying cores and souls as the same thing, allowing them to communicate. But Ion self-destroyed, right? Well, from the explosion, many fragments, shooting stars and light modes fell. In fact, a light mode touched Numa's core to reactivate it. Or, as we have covered before, Monado Metal could store souls like Sansa's, Maines, and maybe Adam's? Wiki-Wall theory. And artifices too, as they fused with the Trinity and the material was synthesized by the Trinity. Probably Albis made the Monado Metal too. And these two metals, which could be the very same, were the basis for Origin Metal. There you have it, 4 plausible ways for Malos to return, something that was hinted in Xenoblade 2, it did not come out of nowhere, just saying, in case a certain part of the fandom gets mad. In fact, I theorized about the shard after Future Redeem, where I was convinced by someone else that Malos coming back wasn't possible, and became a non-believer, just before starting the Future Redeem lore analysis series. I will not say which Xenotuber was Malos after Ionius. Anyways, if we follow the shard theory or the backup one, knowing his absence was a factor that made Albis inactive early on, and later he decided alone to screw everything but the future. It's possible that Malos/Logos is in a weakened state, not fully recovered, his essence, leftovers inside N's sword. He most likely doesn't have a body to return to, existing as light/data until Origin recorded and reconstructed everything, allowing Malos to return as a sword, and couldn't join or awake Alvis as he was incomplete and outside the core, and brought him close but failed, maybe one of his missions in his story? And, unlike Fiora, Lyra, and Mithra, who became objects in Ionios but should return to normal in the new world, Malos/Logos has no physical form to return to yet. After Noah and N became one again, Lucky 7 doesn't change. It gains a new art/ability, but that's it. The sword didn't change to having one side of the blade white and the other black, nor its shape. The purple of this attack comes from Mobius and the core room, not the sword. The sword nearby glows green. So Noah doesn't seem to have thrown Logos too. The black sword was either assimilated into Origin, or will Logos, as N's sword, appear somewhere in the new world waiting for a new wielder? Or the original Noah? Why Noah? N was like his partner, linked to his reincarnations. There's a reason they met. Maybe Malos saw in Noah what he saw in Jin, a man that loses everything over and over, the wretched place that the world was, and decided to help him or follow him. And we don't know if this is all that it takes, but Amalthus was able to keep young for over 500 years. He said it's because he was the driver of the Aegis. Of course, Amalthus experimented a lot and assimilated other cores too. So, we can't say for sure. All I'm saying is we could see a little bit more of Noah, because of his connection to Logos. Shulk and Rex have returned previously, so I don't see why we can't have Xenoblade's 3 protagonists come back too. But we know we'll see more of Logos, Malos for sure. I'll talk about that in a moment. But we need to discuss about Origin first. Logos, the next Origin admin. Let's be clear, this isn't Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, where Sheikah technology mysteriously disappears with no explanation. Origin still exists. I believe so even before Takahashi said there's still more to Origin stuff to come. The worlds separated, returning to the safe state Origin originally recorded them. Time didn't go backwards, just in case. Then, the worlds fused correctly. Reboot initiation process succeeded. All of this because of Origin. I personally believe that it will stay just as we left it, in its bird hatching from an egg form, like Deus Merkaba in Xenogears, a monument of a finished conflict. Finally, Episode 6. Now, what's the importance of Origin for the future? Plenty of things. Takahashi said Alvis was the first and original administrator of Origin, and in the main story of Xenoblade 3, the administrator was Lucette. Shulk and Rex should return to normal. We don't know if A will stay or not, but Origin is teased to have another administrator eventually, and I believe Logos/Malos could be it, either with or without A. In fact, if A/Ontos stays female and Logos returns to his original blue color, we could get back the older color scheme of the male and female components, being red and blue, like Mayneth and Sansa, or Mary and Chaos before them. I will elaborate on this and why it's important. Please stay with me. First, there is something crucial in Origin aside from mixing the worlds again. Origin contains the souls of the people of the city. We know they will be reborn in the new world. Many are concerned about how this will happen, due to the generational gaps and the right couples. I don't think it will be a random process. On the contrary, how the souls will be distributed into the new worlds will be part of Origin's functions, hence Logos' new role, managing the rebirth, the Logos' artificial destiny. Just like the Indoline mural in All Rest about the origins of the world, Sansa/Arglass imprisonment by the High End in Bionis, or the origin of the worlds in Ionios, history becomes myth. Myth becomes fairy tales. I believe Origin's exact workings will be unknown to the general masses, and will instead become a religious symbol, something of an idol or a deity, that gives life to their kids, through an Origin shard pendant or something like a mystic giant stork delivering babies. Babies. The souls of the city. The Logos' artificial destiny. As said before, we know they'll be reborn in the new world. How it happens may be one important plot point. I mentioned the Logos in Origin managing the soul's birth theory. But something else could happen along with this, not contradicting it. Most souls could be easily traceable to certain couples and such, easy to manage. All souls of the city were recorded. This includes more than 1060 years of city souls. But, due to some time and generation gaps, some souls may have trouble to find a body, or will not be able to be born up front. So many people stored there, with the desire to exist, and I think there are two ways they can forcefully come to existence. First, in Xenoblade 3, we saw the Mobius droids, and the Ionios Moments book confirmed that these droids are actually souls recorded in Origin, that had a strong desire to manifest and exist, that used Origin metal from within Origin to have a temporal rushed body to interact with the world. A considerable amount, and not only people, but animals as well. Certain parts of Origin look like a town. Well, people that have not been granted a body by Logos/Origin might break out through these means, skipping the system rules. Origin and Origin metal still exists. People are recorded there, like ghosts. It happened before. Now, the other alternative, or it could happen along the previous one, something like pods, or like consoles, not actual consoles or Mobius. Let me explain. Pods are self-explanatory. They could hijack some pods, be revived elsewhere, like in Ionios. Other people were revived as consoles with a Mobius body, their souls stored in the Mobius core. Origin can do that. And to set, X and Y weren't even people to begin with, but got bodies. Gray skin, pointy ears, Mobius and the Endless Now are gone, but the machine that gave birth to that world and those bodies still exists. Origin is still a Holmes-made, flawed machine. In Xenoblade 3, all the souls from Bionis and All Rest, in fear of annihilation, wanted to preserve the present, became a collective consciousness, and created their salvation and savior, the Mobius Wish and Z. Now, in the current time, imagine all the souls of generations of city people, where some are reborn effectively, but others left out. They all want to exist. We could see the creation of another collective consciousness, the collective will to live, no matter what. Maybe an artificial woman will guide those souls. The Endless Now is not necessary, but they crave for a body, and could get it through Origin shards or Mobius-like body. Instead of Mobius, let's call them Neo-Ouroboros for now, as the city folk have a Ouroboros bluff, or call them ghosts, or they could be this game's use of the word blade, reusing the idea of beyond Logos artificial destiny emancipator. Basically, my idea of Mobius slash Neo Ouroboros slash Blades becoming a race, although they wouldn't be well seen by Logos and Origin. Rebels? Defiance of the system? The city's collective consciousness. The new set. What the spark am I talking about? Basically, the new collective consciousness of Neo Ouroboros, Ghosts or Blades also created a new set equivalent, leader of the faction that wants to exist. Here you have some references for this idea. Some related games that had a similar concept of set also got a friendlier reincarnation of it after some events, or you can skip to avoid Xenoblade X artwork lore, and skip to avoid Splatoon 3 DLC spoilers. First, Xenoblade X. L. We have a weird alien that Earth's people found on Mira. Blue/grey skin, pointy ears, horns. For some reason, they are the only alien that doesn't use the planet's translation system. They had to learn the language from the crashed white whale debris. Now, they refer to themselves as we. Could be because mispronouncing or changing words in well-known human idioms is part of their comic relief role. But they know too much about the planet, about Xenoblade 1 lore, like the Telethia, and the art book of unused prequel/sequel content shows us what they call L's true or original form, a devil-like creature. As the planet Mira behaves similarly to Ionios, both being planets made out of a fusion of worlds, I believe this is the alien version of Zed's concept. Devil form, knowledge of the planet, and the plural hinting the collective, backed by the other devils in the next page. So, the theory. A now friendly being representing a collective consciousness, being a devil in the past. L's name standed for El Sirufe. Rearrange the letters, Lucifer. Okay, now into the Splatoon 3 Side Order DLC spoilers. Order, the main antagonist, as the Eternity symbol, was an AI born from the collective wish of a perfect world where nothing had to change. Sounds familiar? Monolith also worked on this game, by the way. Order 2 returned in a way friendlier form or shape. So, this pattern of collective consciousness representatives returning makes me think that, all following the vague conjectures I've made so far, that another being looking similar to Zed will be born from among the new collective city souls. Neo Ouroboros/Ghosts/Blade instead of Mobius, that haven't been able to be reborn through the Logos/Origin artificial destiny. This new set, let's call him Danat, like Satan or Zarathustra, could be the leader of the unborn city folks that get a body through Origin shards or consul-like bodies, and he may form an alliance with the people of the Renal Earth, following the Xenoblade Cross concept of L, because somehow they are being targeted as Origin rebels, going beyond the system. Sinners. I know this is conjecture based on other conjectures, but still, we are theorizing after all. By the way, I was going to make a bigger section of this, but decided to mention it quickly instead. Skip to this part to avoid Xenoblade Cross Japanese spoilers. The term Beyond Logos Artificial Destiny Emancipator, aka Blade, comes from the Japanese Xenoblade Cross, the faction of the protagonists. Small spoiler. The name was given by Nagi, based on something a dear friend of his talked about. That friend is hinted to be one of the aliens that came to Earth to warn them of a threat that brought scale technology like the Ares, the Ouroboros look-alike mech, and most likely comes from the Origin look-alike ship from the intro, as they didn't know about the other faction and similar characteristics. So, in summary, connecting dots, the reused concept of something Logos related to an Origin and Ouroboros lookalike faction, fueled by the idea of Logos, the next admin of Origin, and artificially establishing some sort of destiny for the city. Anyways, wait, what did you say before that? The people of the original Earth, aside from Bionis and all rest nations, the neutral new cities, Lopods, and the Neo-Ouroboros/Ghost/Blades race, another party was foreshadowed to be present in the next saga. You may know what I'm talking about if you saw some of my prior videos. People from the original Earth, Episode 6. The originals meeting the new. Project Exodus, Motherships and Earth Lore. Like the Milky Way Federation or Star Cluster Federation existing in Xenogears, losing one ship in Phase Planet, the Galactic Federation of Saga looking for Lost Jerusalem, or the other surviving arcs from Xenoblade Cross, humanity goes to space. Aside from said Easter eggs of Xenogears, Xenosaga and Xenoblade Cross that all the fandom got crazy about, Philadelphia ships, Vector, Dimitri, Salvatore's Earth Life Colonization Program, Project Exodus, and the assets reused, people shouldn't overlook the terms Icarus or Eta Carinae. Let's focus on the first, on Icarus and Earth lore. Icarus, the 8th ship of the Exodus program, carrying people to the great beyond. Future Redeem Radio mentioned there were in total 13 ships. The 9th to 13th were not able to be launched, sadly. Thanks, Klaus. So, Icarus was the last one, part of the normal ships with 418,000 people each. They already sent more than 3 million people out there. Ships 9 to 13 were supposed to be a new generation of ultra-long range colony ships, known officially as Philadelphia-class motherships. Each vessel boasts a capacity of up to 1.5 million people, meaning that if all goes to plan, the project will send a total of 10 million people out in the great beyond. So, 13 ships. They also mentioned the 13 authorities. The Radamanthus Authority housed what would become the World Tree, one of the 3 towers or beanstalks. The buildings and houses we saw in Future Redeem shows us that the Radamanthus is based or governed by what once was North America. In fact, the houses in Future Redeem are reused assets from New Los Angeles, from Xenoblade Cross. But towers were supposed to be in the Ecuador, so the coalition government's Radamanthus stretched beyond the USA, possibly all of America, North, Central and South. The other 2 towers were in Aekus Authority, don't know how you pronounce it, and the third one from the Minos Authority, from which Dmitry Yuriev was the representative or council person. Aside from that, the first low orbit station in the data processing room, there are 13 servers or clusters. Earth worked as a coalition government, a group of actors that coordinate their behavior in a limited or temporary fashion to achieve a common goal. A coalition government in a parliamentary government is a body of advisors that is formed when different political parties choose to cooperate in the administration and regulation of a country or community. Such a situation is likely to occur during a period of crisis, such as during a war, or in response to a political breakdown. Members of all parties in a coalition government are appointed to a cabinet, or in this case we have councils and council persons. So, 13 authorities or council persons to administrate Earth. There was an alliance, but according to the Siren model kit, it already existed before finding the conduit. When it was found, the coalition created the research institution of Aoidos. That name could be relevant again. It's obvious that Earth was a resource and overpopulation issue. As Klaus said, they have ravaged the planet. Not to mention how Gundam was one of the inspirations of Xeno from the beginning, along with others. So, Sending people outside to reduce population with the excuse of expanding human territory is a feasible solution.
Director, the beanstalk cannot hold. The Saviorite rebels are very close to capturing it.
The Saviorite rebels, Vector and Dimitri. I don't think Saviorite is the name of these artificial humans. If we think of them as Realians from Xenosaga or J-bodies from Xenoblade Cross, Saviorite, in Japanese Salvatores, just like the ones in Xenosaga, is the name of the organization. So, there was an organization of these yet unnamed artificial human forced workers. I believe the rebellion could have already existed, demanding human rights, the Protection Bill. Said rebellion was labeled as terrorists, hence why everyone thinks the bill would not be approved yet again. Now, how did they become a threat? This is where Vector and Dmitry Yuriev come in. Just like Yuriev was behind the Salvatores, the Xenoblade version of him would be supporting this group, like insert country name backing up insert terrorist organization in secret. Plenty of examples found. Blade's Dimitri would be involved with Vector, of course. By the way, the Vector logo in Future Redeem added the company's motto, "Here, the future." Vector is probably very similar, being behind the manufacturing of technology like electrodomestics, radios, weapons, the artificial humans, and probably funding Aoidos and Project Exodus, meaning they want something from Etagarinae? More on that later. So, the Saviorites were backed up with weapons and the modified Colossus artifices we saw, with no slave generator and a pilot instead of AI. Let's remember that the artifices were created by the Trinity AI to protect the beanstalk. They are controlled by them and powered by the conduit wirelessly. Somehow, Vector got a hold some of these, or all their models. Dimitri could do this to get access to the conduit, which was in the hands of the coalition government and Aoidos, for whichever goals they have. I don't remember if I mentioned it in a video or Discord, but how did the Saviorites overpower the Trinity artifices? Literally through faith and the indomitable human spirit. The Trinity is more logical, whereas the Saviorites had a purpose, a cause to die for. You can see them going kamikaze to destroy artifices, sacrificing themselves for the cause. Dying for the cause was illogical. The sirens were more powerful, but with pilots crashing and exploding, at least 3 lives to take one down, illogical to the AI, the indomitable human spirit. Before discussing Etagarinae and Icarus, let's briefly go back to the Xeno roots, Xenogears, and Future Redeem mention of Philadelphia ships. Let's discuss the real-life version of that, the Philadelphia experiments and the USS Eldridge story. In summary, it's considered to be a hoax, fiction, about an experiment conducted in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in October 1943, where a scientist named Franklin Renault allegedly conducted an experiment of invisibility in the USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort. It was successful, and some versions claim it accidentally teleported, and when it materialized in the same place, the crew was either fused with the ship, frozen in time, intangible, or insane. It varies from version to version. The thing is, in Xenogears, the Eldridge was a Philadelphia-class ship from the Galaxy Federation that carried Deus after it went rogue and invaded Mictam. The ship disappeared as we know Abel awoke the Zohar. The Zohar awoke Deus, who destroyed the ship and put the events of Xenogears in motion. Something similar to the experiment happened in Xenoblade, Klaus' experiment, but displaced matter or split dimensions, and 8 motherships in space like the Icarus, but we have no idea of what happened to them. Could the ships have survived in a space in between? Or just reappeared as the worlds fuse again, like in the story of the Philadelphia experiment? What happened to the people in the ship? Insane? Fused? Frozen in time? Or materialized as if nothing happened, just as they left Earth? Then, will they come back? Or did they arrive to Eta Carinae? Speaking of, Eta Carinae, binary stellar system with some very interesting qualities. But I'm afraid I'm not familiar with astronomy stuff. Anyways, we have two options of its importance. If the Icarus and the other motherships reach their destination or not, and how much time transcurred. It depends on how the ships work. How the experiment happened was that Earth was surrounded by a circle of light, thanks to the towers. Then everything close was sucked in, and then exploded. The universe was split into two dimensions. Now, how far did the ships make it? Could they have survived the experiment, remaining in a weird limbo between dimensions? Or were also cut in half? It's always messy how far the experiment absorbed. But by the time of Ionios, it seems only Earth was the remaining part of the universe to merge again. Icarus loses the conduit slave generator, or we could say conduit emulator. Anyways, what matters is the technology of the ships. If it's a normal ship, it will take a while to reach Eta Carinae. However, the big leaps in technology thanks to the Trinity and the conduit could have helped. Let's remember the artifices could create wormholes or rifts. So, the ships could have a slave generator with infinite energy until the conduit leaves, and could have some wormhole technology to take shortcuts. Or a conduit emulator. So, there are two branching options. First, the ships didn't reach Eta Carinae. The conduit disappeared, leaving them without much, and after their readings showed that Earth came back, decided to return. So, 480,000 people or refugees in each ship. Icarus was the last sent, so it should be the closest. And I believe it is the blue light we saw in Future Within. To make things worse, they could have lost control of the ship during the landing and crashed in the planet, resulting in many injured or even death, with Origin trapping their souls within the system, a possible source of conflict. The other option is that the ships did arrive to Eta Carinae, and things here could get weird. Either they built space colonies and evolved as a civilization like Gears, Star Cluster Federation, or met the Overlords. Arthur C. Clarke influence. Hear me out. As Klaus said, the conduit will be the gift of some divine entity. What if the Earth ships found an advanced civilization that was responsible for leaving the conduit on Earth? Why? What the spark are you talking about? Well, some of the sources of inspiration Takahashi had, 2001 Space Odyssey, and especially Childhood's End. I was made aware of this last one in the UMN community, and already finished. It's not long, so I recommend it. Without spoiling much, Eta Carinae was the location of the Overlord's homeworld. The Overlords were the names human gave to an alien civilization that came to Earth to help humanity leave the senseless killing and ravaging, giving them food and peace, with some resistance from those who thought struggling was part of being human. Reminds me of the Saberite rebels. But the Overlords, including the supervisor named Krelian, like the one from Xenogears, referred to themselves not as lords, but servants. And their purpose was to help humanity, like other races before, to evolve to the next level and ascend to the higher plane. Think of it like what Krelian from Xenogears wanted at the end. Free the minds, live the self, become one with the waves. And in Space Odyssey, the monolith is a crucial figure that appears before humans each time a new step in evolution is about to be made. Maybe they could reuse the name Cimmerians from Xenoblade Cross,
For the overlords?
if this option is to happen, or reuse it as the name of a new government from the space colonies. But what if we'll not get a continuation of Xenoblade 3 and the moment of the blue shooting start until Xenoblade 7 or something? To make something truly different, to betray everyone's expectations, they could make another trilogy of the Icarus or the Fleeting Space or the Tekarinae before. Maybe the Conduit materializes in one of their ships or colonies. Important adventures, mix of xenosaga and cross elements. A whole space saga? Unlikely, as we were supposed to see where the story and world goes with Xenoblade 3. Maybe
A prequel in Klaus' world?
Conduit Eidos Vector and Saber stuff? The origins of the Conduit? You now see why the thought of humans finding that kind of stuff in Ekaterinae. Klaus wanted humanity to evolve, to be much more, to be closer to the divine. Maybe the experiment was to surround Earth and force it into a wormhole, to bring it to a higher domain, like the wave existence dimension, where minds were free and not individuals. But by forcing it into a tiny wormhole, it
Didn't fit.
or wasn't stable and was split. The conduit, or gate in Japanese, is a gateway or multiversal joint after all. Maybe a dimension that leads to every other one. Important to mention that Klaus spoke about multiple dimensions before splitting his, and that people, probably the other beanstalks, were sent to different ones. Maybe another tower with Dimitri and half of Galea are out there? The conduit could have been used as a gateway to colonize other planets or dimensions. Could we learn about the conduit in the future? As, unlike the other Xeno games, it wasn't the central plot point in the Klaus saga. And the Xenoblade trilogy is full of foreshadowing. In Xenogears, the Zohar existed before Earth. To be precise, the birth of the universe. Even though it looks artificial, the actual Zohar is the Eye. The monolith was built way later on. Perfect Works was all about Zohar and wave existence, and Fae. Maybe episode 6 was going to be about the origin of it all? Along the invasion of the Milky Way galaxy to Fae's planet. Or why Gears Jerusalem was also lost. Anyways, too much speculation, let me open the windows. One more thing about the wave existence, which was captive in the Kadumoi inside the Zohar. A quote: "You have experienced much loss and deprivation in your life. It is very tragic. Our contact and the resulting transference of power and will between you and I most likely played a part in splitting your personality. The Trinity processor is basically the Kadumoi, with male and female components, in both Gears and Blade, and is linked to the Zohar/Conduit. This quote could very well be the clue of
The relationship between
Malos or Logos with Noah and N, especially given that the Trinity is recognized by Takahashi to have admin rights in Origin, and that messing with the source code can cause glitches. Aligned with that last thing, Noah or N came back,
even after his homecoming.
but it was him, Noah, that brought back M after all. Z just showed her. It could have been an illusion or a small demonstration of admin power. But Seth did say about her life, "You must breathe it in yourself." So, by doing so, plus their psyche and repentance, caused a glitch, allowing them to split and reborn. Too much speculation. Let's return to gameplay talk, along with some interview quotes. Thanks to LXJK Archive, Xeno, complete works. The last 2 points, although they are quite long. Anyways, the Xenoblade engine development history. To understand how the next game could be, we need to give a look at the history of the Xenoblade game's development and the team's thought process. Important to mention, Takahashi has a tendency of lying about whether or not there will be more games. even when they are already developing one. So, as we speak, and probably during the development of Xenoblade 3, the next game has already been on the works. Xenoblade 2 started development before they even finished Xenoblade Cross. Xenoblade Definitive Edition and Xenoblade 3 proposals were submitted together after Xenoblade 2. Xenoblade Definitive Edition was being developed alongside Korna, while saying we have no firm plans of continuing the series. And in most interviews and messages, Takahashi says the classic "if we are able to make more games" or "if there is another Xenoblade." Don't believe him. He also makes the games with sequels in mind. First, Xenoblade. The bases were to have fun combat, leaving the stagnant or reduced turn-based combat behind. They highlighted how other RPGs at the time had graphics as their priority. Remember, we got Final Fantasy XIII around the time. And JRPGs were in a decline from a Western point of view. No wonder why Nintendo of America didn't want to bring Xenoblade. Monolith focused on having a big world and a combat that develops on the spot. No transitions, less time wasted. They started by the Titan models and putting them with a story Takahashi had in mind. For their next game, they wanted a sci-fi approach, and Takahashi wrote one of his biggest collection of stories yet, that we didn't saw due to the game only adapting a chapter of it, and many cuts due to online functions. But, most importantly, they went fully open world, due to their desires of a truly connected world, unlike the first one being smaller big maps connected by loading screens. Having many critiques regarding the loose story, they decided to focus more on a linear Xenoblade 1 storytelling. But also, they had to hurry, because the next console is on the way. They started developing Xenoblade 2 a year before finishing Xenoblade Cross. Luckily, the engine was already made, so they didn't have issues they had with X. However,
The new console's portability.
and the adjusted release timeframe, a launch year game,
Complicated the things.
they didn't even know specs specifics. The story was more like Xenoblade 1. No open world, linear. The maps were connected by loading screens, scenes and ships. Due to being fairly new to the system and recently adapting the engine to the portable console, maps and resolution were smaller. The maps even smaller than Xenoblade 1's. However, the amount of props, details, and the textures were higher than the Wii. Having smaller maps made the content like location, side quests, and structures to be more fleshed out, compared to 1 at least. You could see something similar in Future Redeem, how the Seventh Omnia, the second smallest region, felt so big. Condensed content is the main idea here. Returning to Xenoblade 2, it has some of the biggest and most detailed towns in the franchise, not counting New LA. At launch though, there were many glitches and errors that with time they patched and balanced, but still, low resolution along with severe slowdowns, especially with many orbs and particles, even in Torna with the fight against Malos with the sirens in the back. Important to highlight, they hired many freelance artists to design blades. Lack of staff, but also to train their staff to 3D model different art styles. Ever since Xenogears, Xenosaga and Xenoblade, it's all about learning on the go and training the young, the next generation of developers. The engine was further adapted to the Switch and greatly improved in Torna, the Golden Country. For Definitive Edition, they ported or adapted Xenoblade to the current engine, and for the epilogue, they put together the big unused Bionic Shoulder map. They stated they wanted to do more story-wise, but time and budget weren't on their side, so we couldn't experience the full length of Future Redeem. The most important thing they did, engine-wise, was testing the amount of NPCs together. That was the purpose of the Pawn Specters. For Xenoblade 3, they wanted to push further the amount of NPCs and enemies at once, the drawing distance, and making bigger maps again, even bigger than Xenoblade 1. But still not as big as Pros, along with targeting a bigger resolution this time, as it was a strong criticism they had for a while. However, something that they mentioned twice and deeply hurts me was having to reduce the Pharaoh's concept, due to them pushing the systems already. They wanted to make small towns inside each furnace, but they had to make the tents or the platoon around the tank concept. You can see how Iota had a garden, Gamma was bigger, 9 had more floors, 11 had the colony in the furnace, and multiple art featuring towns in the furnaces. The closest they got was Colony 4, with around 5 floors. They could have put tents, bath and kitchen inside, or some in the roof, but it would probably have produced lag. For the original concept to work, they needed each furnace to be the size of the Anardanian Titan warship, or the Argentum Trade Guild. Maybe in a Xenoblade 3 Definitive Edition? I can dream. In order to achieve the amount of characters in these bigger maps, the biggest Xenomaps on the Switch yet, they had to lower the texture resolution, terrain detail and such. The frames and resolution were more consistent than 2, but the cost of flora, grass and bushes in the maps was noticeable. The closest was Alfeto or some islands in Cadencia. They had bigger plants. If we see the photo bashing cases like Milik, Egus, or the main theme of Urian tunnels having huge crystals that had to be removed. Cost of map size, characters and resolution. Takahashi not only is open to criticism, he wants criticism. In his words, it drives him forwards. Evident in the corrections of Xenoblade 2 made after Xenoblade Cross narrative, or Xenoblade 3 navigation after Xenoblade 2 criticism, or even back in Xenoblade 1, when saying they wanted to make a hero that people don't hate, following some xenosaga criticism, resulting in shock. It is very certain that they'll bring back vehicles. They are going bigger again, especially in the next gen system. The boat was crucial for Cadencia, just getting in with the press of a button. Some ground vehicles like Skells will be more than well received, and it's clear we are going back to a more sci-fi grounded world. So, mechs are pretty much guaranteed. Every Xeno game has mechs. No exceptions. Anyways, the next saga could be like all Xeno titles, meaning direct sequels, as the 2 dimensions became one again. No way they have that many different worlds or rules. However, we could get several time skips between each entry, as from the beginning each entry in the Xenoblade Chronicles has depicted a single episode within the flow of a larger time and space, showing us how some nations grow stronger. Maybe Earth people make another space elevator, or more spaceships arrive with each entry, new continents are discovered, excavations, new city, or visiting another planet. As having the same world would get stale. We don't know how many entries the next saga will have. We need to see the world and time progress, or eventually leaving the planet behind and returning to space opera vibes, new planets, bases in asteroids, xenosaga concepts, or Gundam ideas. You could say the Cloud Saga was the beginning of the world, or the main planet, or origin of the nations that will conquer the stars eventually. Last section. How the next Xenoblade could look like. If there is another Xenoblade, it will be likely something vastly different from what came before, in style and music. I would like to make my next goal something that will betray everyone's expectations, in a good way. But we also have I think everyone who has played this title and the additional stories in the expansion pass can imagine what lies in the future for Xenoblade. I think imagining what Monolith Soft future games will look like while playing this title would be another way to enjoy it. That's on Xenoblade Chronicles 3. What did he mean by this? Also, additional stories? As in plural? Wave 5? Anyways, the next game will be vastly different in style and music, but we can imagine how it will look at the same time? Okay, first, different music. He says this every time. Xenoblade 3 already had different music to what came before, going for a more melancholic, devastated atmosphere. Xenoblade Cross was also different from the previous one, going for a more experimental alien techno vibe or epic anime intro music. Okay, now, how it will look? These images are for illustration and dramatization purposes, obviously, to show some elements that could make it into Neo Ionios. Next game, next gen, the next powerful system would guarantee the return of bigger and richer worlds, less compromises in their vision. The game could be more accurate to the concept art. For the planet, Ionios and Mira are good examples to follow. In theory, the Titan continents that fused in 3, and even the ones that weren't present in 3, should be back, and in next gen, so bigger or more accurate size. Maybe some regions would fuse with another, but most importantly, as this is a step forward, the terrain would be less recognizable. Let's remember that the ideas for Xenoblade 3 involve the literal fusion of landmarks, such as Gormott fins with Bionis arcs. But, as 3 is a middle ground between the original Klaus saga and the next one, they kept them intact, mostly, as separate, identifiable entities, accurate to their respective games. Now we could get an unrecognizable land, ideal to explore, to rediscover. The two worlds fuse for good this time, so little to no annihilation holes. And the fragmented sea is probably gone, giving us an ocean connecting the different landmasses. We got a boat in 3, so another one or mechs will come in handy. Origin, the most likely thing to remain intact, will either be high above in a mountain, under the sea, or at the very center of the world, maybe rusty with some grass or moss, and perhaps partially fused with the ground. Now, will it be an orb or a bird? Personally, I want the latter, as a way to show consistency, and having it visible from most regions as this game's giant thing in the background would be cool. Okay, I will delve into this a bit more in the next geography analysis videos, but basically there are two ways in which Origin rebuilt the world in 3. I call them matching and overlapping. Imagine Origin decomposes the world like puzzles, and then is tasked to make one with the pieces from both. Matching is putting together pieces according to biomes. Grass with grass, like Bionis Leg and Gormott, floating sea island with floating jellyfish island, like Aerith and Leftheria, and so on. The other way in which the world was rebuilt is overlapping, or rather a side effect. Parts of the regions that are being fused by matching cannot coexist in the same space or place, most of the times in crucial intersection points, and as a result, result in them being randomly spawned somewhere else. An example of this is the Daksha Shrine from Bionis Leg, which was located under and next to the third arc, the broken one. In Ionios though, that place was occupied by Guraf Lava, the red forest between Alfeto and Melnak, both from Gormott. Daksha Shrine wasn't able to fuse with this and instead spawned inside Ragel Bridge, which was moved to the Semt Omnia region. Also, thanks to overlapping, the Semt Omnia region itself is where most of the overlapping leftovers arrive, but more on that on another video. The thing is, the next world will be full of this, and the matching system would be amplified. So, the multiple isolated grasslands could become one. Same with the desert, as Ionios is a repurposed concept of Mira, a planet made of a fusion of different worlds, and the regions mostly match, even some terrain. I think it's a good model to follow. Let's start with the desert. Oblivia already has Igus and Danak looking parts, and the isolated desert canyon that the Keves Castle region is could join too, as it looks like a desert, forming the big mountain and floating islands we see there. More ordained ribs could do these rocks. The next system will be more powerful than a Wii U. They could get even more crazy with the new stuff and designs. Plus some unseen titans like the dead ones that weren't present in Ionios, like Temperantia or Meconis. Now, I believe that, just as Origin remains, its data like the City Souls remain as well. Origin still recorded unique things and events that happened in Ionios. Everything that exists is reality. So some data of Ionios would be mixed with those of Ionis and Orres, specifically things made in Ionios by Origin, aka Ferronices. I believe the Keves Castle would become the Oblivia Ring-like object, and Ferronis Hulks would become the weird statues we saw. We could maybe get remains of the Keves Ferronis form, maybe the head covered in dust or an arm buried somewhere. The volcanoes from Morodane could either come to or stay behind with its head due to Ionios data and make Foldros or a lava region. Mixing all the grass areas could result in having something like Primordia. The Kule Lake waterfall and that weird rock from Isana remind me of this area of Primordia. Some arcs are like Bionis. Going further, they could make them look like a fusion of Bionis arcs and Gormot or Leftheria. Some columns resemble the ones in Future Connected Shoulder, plus the amount of lakes. Primordia also has the domes that could be Leftherian islands in the ground instead of the sea, also present in Xenoblade 3 concept art. The Talon Rock looks like Bionis' wing, and maybe remains of colonies like Nine or the Hulk from Milik could be incorporated, fused with the terrain, make these weird rocks that also look like the ones in Oblivia. Ideas from my now outdated first video. And, as in a new world where time is not stopped and little to no weird annihilation events, Gormot's head would fall, so we could get the better Capricorn Island, like in the concept art. The jungle parts of Pentalas, Cote Falls and some islands from Cadencia's Great Shore Base, Searing Strand and Cascade Crossroad will make Noctilum, best Xeno map. We also got bioluminescent plants, so either part of Aurora Shelf, the Lost Colony, Demi-Human Gutter or parts of Uraya could influence it. Uraya would be the basis of the next ice region, on the outside, all the deformed terrain and things around it, maybe the top of the head, the ruins of the tail, and so on. Silvalum looks like the inside, having similar arcs and glowing trees. Let's not forget that some of Uraya's concept art was clearly based in Silvalum. The Titan's shape would be less recognizable than in 3, like the early art showed, making sense of how soldiers didn't believe it was alive once. Maybe, due to Ionios data, Uraya is reconstructed with a hole or split to have ice mountains and fungi valley. Fonsomaima or Agnus-like Nation City could be inside it. And speaking of, let's talk about nations, the last stretch. Bionis nations of Homs, Machina and Entia seem to have joined forces after Sansa's defeat, although with some tension from time to time due to the old war. In all rest, Moradane, Uraya, Gormot, etc., seems that the nations also joined forces and technology, some sort of coalition, collaborating even with Bionis, all with the purpose of escaping annihilation. After the intersection and proper reconstruction, there shouldn't be a reason to remain together. so they could return to the old status and have multiple separate nations. Weaknesses that the enemy, Neuroboros, Ghost, Blades, Vector, or Old Earth people would try to exploit. Divide and conquer. A game of alliances. The next game could be more political thriller like Xenosaga, instead of just two main sides as usual.
That is, unless.
Worst case scenario, the ships arrive in the very far future where Bionis and Orres people already left, and they just discovered ruins, like in Xenoblade Cross. I hope that's not the case. No pawns would remain neutral. No differences between Orres and Bionis pawns. Probably will commerce with Old Earth people and be in caravans as established in Xenoblade 3 and Xenoblade Cross, both also having the Nopal coin system. The town at the beginning could become a Europe-like city, while the space people from Old Earth could get space colonies or cities, like 5th Jerusalem or New LA. Remember that Radamanthus authority, which was on North America, was the port for the ships. And the town we visit was like American suburbs. Space stations could be like Elysium, but alive. The Dameron or the Kukai Foundation from Xenosaga. They will have mechs like Colossus or new unseen ones based in Xenosaga Ames or ESs, or Xenoblade Cross Scales or Dolls. No sirens as those were controlled and made by the Trinity, powered by the Conduit, unless they have a secret modified siren with an important character as the pilot. They modified the Colossus after all. But sirens are harder due to their unique non-human design. The outsiders would be arriving to an already conquered planet like Planet of the Apes. They would be in disadvantage, so I believe some of our protagonists would be there, from the Earth people. Unless it is how I said about playable flashbacks and multiple parties or campaigns, that to the starting town like Colony 6 or the military district, they could also become or make a separate faction like the city from 3, with a military green aesthetic. Emerald City, like Wizard of Oz, maybe? With their mechs like Gilgamesh and now plenty of resources. Maybe the mechanized Ouroboros like the Ares. A new young Matthew would be a pilot short. Or the hypothetical unborn souls that forced their ways into existence would be the ones making a green city-like nation, with Ouroboros mechs and origin droids, or console-like bodies. We could get something like Titans back. Keep in mind that they want to innovate or differentiate from the last saga though, so unlikely. Anyways, we could either get small titans like the ones from Xenoblade Cross, massive fauna with crystal cores that can house a house or a small town, titans like Xenoblade 2 back, a seraphic keratina that titan features such as crystals and weird translucent tentacles. Third option is to have something like Agnus and Keves castles, giant mechs with a city inside, either moving or resting like Mechonis, also the original Blade days. I desire to see Noah and Mio, maybe a wedding between the White Princess, old concept art, daughter of Queen Nia, and the Black Knight, old concept art and maybe the Logos Sword, helping to establish firm bonds between Bionis and all rest people, maybe trying to maintain peace in a separate faction in the future. But that's my coping speaking. And as soon as the first trailer hits the internet, this whole video could be debunked. I hope I get at least something right or close enough. I know it's too derivative from Xenoblade 3. Everything is subject to change. But, as said before, I wanted to discuss other possibilities. What do you think will happen next?
Will this video age like wine or milk? What are your thoughts on these ideas?
I need you to believe me.
Please let us know in the comments below. That will be for today. Have a good one.